Thank you. This is Business Nigeria coming to you live from our studio. Let's get into a second conversation right away. Nigeria and Angola have opposed a reduction in their crude oil production quotas by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries ahead of OPEC meeting today, which of course should happen today. Report says oil member states were far from resolving the deadlock over oil production quotas for some African members that had already forced the group to delay a critical meeting amid faltering prices. The report stated that the Saudi-led alliance had not been able to reach an agreement with Angola and Nigeria, which were pushing back against lower quota limits for 2024 that reflect their diminished production capabilities. Well, to provide some perspective, I'm joined by the Associate Director and Head of Agusto Consulting, Mr. Jimmy Ogbobina. He joins me virtually now. Thank you, Mr. Ogbobina, for joining us. We appreciate your time. Let's get started right with Saudi Arabia, which has been making a voluntary oil production reduction of 1 million barrels per day since July. Is asking other members of the coalition to reduce their quotas to share the burden of costs. Do you see OPEC agreeing to this call in today's meeting, or how might the outcome of the OPEC meeting today affect the prices of crude oil?
So first, let me just start with a little joke. Nigeria has no business with this conversation. Okay. This conversation is firstly for producers who are capable of not only meeting their quota, but can exceed it. So what we have been seeing over the last 2 to 3 years, that to achieve the kinds of price targets that OPEC countries and even some of whom we will call the friends of OPEC, like Russia and Brazil, to achieve the kind of price targets that they aim for, they come into a broader cartel to curtail supplies because it's a demand-supply market. So they've come together to form a broader cartel to pay back supplies. The success of today's meeting will determine where price levels will go to. Okay? If we see a scenario whereby they can't agree on the quota cuts, and we see the fight for market share once again, then what that means is that demand will become more bullish. Supply will become more bullish, and that could soften prices from the $80 to $90 per barrel levels. It would soften prices. It's always a very tricky game predicting where oil prices will be. And that's why I think what we need to do is to keep our eyes on where demand and supply be. Okay? So it's very important for OPEC to agree on these price cuts. To agree on these supply cuts if they have to keep prices at the $80 to $90 per barrel level.
Okay. So, are you there, Mr. Ogbobina?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so Nigeria and Angola are on their toes, so pushing back against this court. And this is simply because I want us to just look at the issue, because Nigeria in particular has not been able to meet up with her production quota, as you said. How much power does Nigeria wield on the negotiation table, looking at the fact that, OPEC is planning to cut back the production output for its members, inclusive Nigeria?
I'm sure somewhere in OPEC office in Vienna, they'll be running jokes on Nigeria. Why this argument around your quota? Nigeria's quota has been left frozen around the 1.7 to 8 million barrel mark for a while. Every time OPEC have converged to review quotas, Nigeria's quota has been left untouched. However, all through this period, OPEC has seen that Nigeria has struggled with typically zone 300 to 400,000 barrels in negative variance from our quota. In other words, every time we do 1.3, then we're about 400,000, and when we do 1.4, then we're about 300,000 barrels in negative variance from our quota. What this means is that you also need to appreciate that they also quota, people also breach their quota. And in quote, those who breach their quota, it may not have a a significant impact on the markets because the calculation is such that Nigeria's quota at 1.7 is what the analysts use to look at the quota allocation. But because Nigeria is 300 to 400,000 short on its quota, what that means is that for those who are breaching and flouting this quota, the market can absorb another 3 to 400,000 barrels. What Saudi may be looking for here now is a more aggressive quota cut. We do not know the kinds of levels they'll give Nigeria, but by saying that they want to cut on Nigeria's quota, maybe 1.5 to 1.6, I think the message here isn't even to Nigeria. The message is to the other countries who may be flouting the quota, that the market is able to absorb the 3 to 400,000 that is being flouted because Nigeria is not able to meet its quota. But the message here is clear. The message isn't even to Nigeria, who's struggling to meet its quota. The message is to the other countries who are breaching their own quota limits and breaching it on the back of Nigeria's inefficiencies. Okay? So while it seems in quote that we are the target, I think that's sharp market analysts will realize that that's where the real target is. The real target is for those who are able to flout, who are flouting the quotas. However, this may be Nigeria's concerns. Okay, having said that, this may be Nigeria's concerns. Nigeria's 2024 budget is benchmarked on 1.78 million barrels per day. Effectively.
Just a moment, Mr. Okay. Gobina. Apologies to cut you. We get back in a moment, but I just want us to, get this clear, this perspective, clearly. You talk about breaching quotas, the quota by OPEC quotas, right? And so would you say Nigeria falls within the category of member countries who are breaching these quotas or falls into the category of, countries who are producing less than the allocated amount?
Okay, so let me just explain what it means about these quotas, breaching quota, or falling above or below.
Exactly.
Let me explain it so that everyone can understand clearly. OPEC is a cartel, a club of major oil producers. They produce less than half the oil. They supply less than half the oil. Not all major oil producing nations are part of OPEC. Russia isn't. The United States isn't. China isn't. Okay? So OPEC is led by Saudi Arabia, the rich Middle East countries, Nigeria, Angola, and a few other countries. So what OPEC tries to do is, OPEC being a significant market supplier of crude oil, because this is a demand-supply scenario, it acts on the forces of demand and supply such that when supply of oil is greater than the demand for oil, what happens is that because you have more oil, more sellers chasing few buyers, then the oil prices go down. In the inverse, when you have a demand, which means more buyers outstripping supply, so you have more people demanding to buy oil versus more sellers, then in that scenario, the prices go up, the prices rise. What OPEC tries to do is to look for an equilibrium in the markets or a disequilibrium that keeps prices high. So OPEC says that let's reduce supply, which just comes to the scenario I painted, that how do you ensure that you have more buyers than sellers? So OPEC says let's reduce supply. But it's not just enough for OPEC to do that, because you have significant producers outside the OPEC cartel, like Russia, like Brazil. So OPEC has brought these other non-OPEC countries into a loose arrangement of controlling supplies such that they are able to stimulate prices and keep prices high at the $80 to $100 range. In doing this, how does OPEC do this? Because OPEC is not a company that produces oil in every country. It's a club of oil-producing countries. So what does OPEC do? OPEC members converge and they decide, each member looks at its own production capacity. So you may have a country that can potentially produce 13 million barrels a day, like Saudi Arabia. A country that can potentially produce 1.8 to 2 million barrels per day, like in Nigeria. And OPEC says to each country, we are trying to pare back supply because we want to stimulate prices upwards. For us to adjust our budget, for us to be able to meet our local budgets, that each country has its own fiscal budget. And each of these countries, oil is a major revenue earner. So it's in their favor when oil prices are high. So OPEC says, can each one of us reduce the supply of oil to the market? Because if each one of us reduces its own supply of oil to the market, the aggregate market supply will drop. Because we are a major producing bloc in the world. And then OPEC has even brought in non-members like Russia, like Brazil, into this club.
Okay.
So to answer your question
yes,
of
yes, go ahead.
Breach, to answer your question of the breach of falling below, the Nigerian quota is around 1.7 million barrels per day. In other words, OPEC says to Nigeria, you can produce up to a limit of 1.7 million barrels per day. Bigger nations like Saudi Arabia, about 1 to 2 million barrels have been taken off their quota. So Nigeria, please do not produce more than 1.7 million. If we can all keep within the quota, then we'll drive prices higher. But what's happened with Nigeria today is that we've not been able to meet our quota. On the average this year, we've done an average of 1.3 to 1.4 million barrels per day, which means that Nigeria is suffering a shortfall of about 3 to 400,000 barrels per day on its quota. So that's where we are today. So we're not at that point of saying, we're not in the club, in the sub-club of members who breach quotas. Rather, we are in the unfortunate end of the curve of members who cannot meet their quotas. And it's a bad place to be for an oil-producing country. Because remember that our quota has been pared back. And at the best of times, Nigeria should be able to do 2 million barrels. Okay? So we should be able to do 2 million barrels. We've been given a quota of around 1.7 million barrels, and we are producing an average of 1.3. So you can see the layers in the data set, and we are much below. First, we are much below our potential. Okay? We're having a shortfall of about 700,000 below our potential. And then even secondly, we are suffering another shortfall on the OPEC quota of another 400,000 barrels a day. So that's where we are as a country in terms of this quota conversation. That's where Nigeria is.
Okay. I asked that question earlier because some people want to look at it, whether it's market politics or market regulation. But away from there, in the 2024 fiscal year, Nigeria is targeting crude oil production of about 1.8 million barrels per day with the benchmark of $77 per barrel and with exchange rate of 750 naira to dollar. How do you suppose the government can achieve this target, given a per quota limit of between 1.3 to 1.5 barrel per day?
Okay, if I were to add a few things to conclude that conversation on quota, especially because we have to look at it from a Nigerian perspective, what are some of the issues that mine or distort a country's capability or capacity to meet its quota or even surpass its quota? First, it possibly will arise as a result of underinvestments. The oil industry is upstream oil and gas industry is one that requires significant investments of capital nature. Okay? And that's where you find the likes of Venezuela. Sadly, Nigeria has also fallen into that band. We've underinvested over the years. Underinvested in new fields, underinvested in even existing fields. And then secondly, so that's a general rule. And then secondly, we have also suffered some form of homebred issues, vandalization, the force majeure that sometimes comes with vandalization, where producers would rather shut down a pipeline that has been breached as opposed to opening up this pipeline and leading to spillage and other consequential environmental factors as a result of oil theft. So that's where, so between underinvestment and oil theft, we're suffering a bigger impact. Now, in terms of the production targets we have, we've benchmarked our 2024 budget on 1.78 million barrels to be precise, approximately 1.8 million barrels. However, in 2023, we've done 1.3 to 1.4 million barrels per day. So any analyst will be asking us, what are we going to do differently? Okay, sorry.
All right, Mr. Gbobine. Apologies, we're far behind the time, and we just want to let you go. I mean, we would really, really love to have you some other time to continue this conversation. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Associate Director and the Head of Agusto Consulting, Mr. Jimmy Gbobine. Thank you for coming on the program. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.